We are shows what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jacob from Sweden.
Welcome to Shows What You Know, your television podcast where we discuss your favorite and least favorite television shows. What is this? Is it your most favorite, your least favorite? You decide. This week we're discussing Bandersnatch, a subsection of Black Mirror, I'd say, a new Black Mirror episode that came out and took us all on an adventure of sorts. Now, I'm here to discuss it with my co-host. You know his name and you know mine, but anyway, my name is Jacob Burrows.
My name is Jim Scampoli, and Jacob, is this a video game?
It is a video game. Ooh, or is it? Well, you
People
decide.
People on social media are like, is this a video game? Is it a TV show? Is it a movie? We're going to go ahead and say it's a TV show because we do a podcast to discuss television shows. You just so happen to get to make some choices, but do you really get to make a choice, or is it all an illusion? That's what we're going to get down to. And this
Interesting. Yeah, so this is Black Mirror. We have done episodes on Black Mirror before, and I think it's really interesting that I think I viewed this differently than I would have if I didn't know it was Black Mirror, if that makes sense. Because the very first thing I think I said to you when you were like, oh, it's a choose your own adventure was, I bet they're going to be all meta and Black Mirror and break the fourth wall. Like, it's so expected that you're going to go down that route. And indeed, spoilers, by the way, they do.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I guess we should say we're going to go through our choices here. And yeah, we will have spoilers on what happens on the Black Mirror Bandersnatch Choose Your Own Adventure movie, TV episode, video game. Real quick before we get into it, though, some people have described this as a game changer. But do you feel like this could work in other settings?
I've seen a lot of people raving about this, and I think Bandersnatch is good, but at the same time, it, like I just mentioned, it did what I expected it to, and it was satisfying in what it was. But it was like I did not think it was a game changer. Like a lot of the principles that you see in, for example, Walking Dead video game, an old Telltale video game, or a new Telltale video game. Not that we're getting more of those anymore, but the whole thing where you make a choice and then you realize afterwards you just ended on the same path anyway, like that sort of thing. You have to do that to make it work. This isn't really a game changer, honestly. It's just a good thing, I think. What do you think?
No, I agree with that, and yeah, I do think it's a cool thing. It's very fun, but it's hard to imagine. Like, because like you said, they lean into, it gets meta, where the fact that you're making the choices becomes a part of the plot for these characters. And I don't know if you could do, I mean, I guess you could do it without that, but is it as fun anymore? And I mean, even going back to Choose Your Own Adventure books, which obviously feature in this episode because he's adapting a Choose Your Own Adventure book, even those books do the same thing where you make some choices and maybe see some different branches, but then you kind of get veered back into another path. And that's even kind of as the episode goes, one of the scenes kind of makes mention of that, of like, I found the happy spot when I made it less your choice and more, my choice, or a destiny. But I don't know, a very interesting thing to do. It's cool that we have this technology to have a thing like this, and you sit with your remote and make choices. It's great to keep piracy down, because who wants to just sit through 500 minutes of footage, or have someone, I guess, put together a version for you? Then it's not as fun, right?
Yeah, no, it is very true. And the reason I brought up, choices not really being choices is that, like you mentioned, It gets very meta. Would it be as fun without it? I think those things where a choice goes one way and seems to go another and then they join up again, those would actually be annoying if we were watching like Lord of the Rings, the choose your own adventure, and it's like, oh, do you want to go over the mountains or through Moria? I'll go over the mountains. Oh, guess what? You're going through Moria. Like, you got to go down there anyway. That would get annoying, but in this case, it works because it is so like it's so clearly about that, and it's about the choices and choices not being choices, everything like that. So it works for this particular thing, but I can't imagine sitting through a really complex story that didn't have this aspect as part of the hook. If it's just trying to tell a story, then it's probably gonna get watered down somehow in the process.
Well, because that's what I mean. Like, say someone did just kind of edit a version that they did into an episode that was like an hour and 20 minutes. It probably wouldn't be a great episode. I mean, given it's almost impossible because the episode does get meta and it's about making these choices. But even like kind of ignoring that for a moment, is it compelling? Is it a compelling story just on its own?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're going to get into. But I think the most fun part, we have to do it first, is comparing our different choices on going through the story. Frosties or Sugar Puffs, Jim?
Frosties.
Frosties. And for me,
everyone must like Frosties, right?
This is so interesting because this is when you have to start thinking about like Netflix and what they do with this information. And this is basically like market research. And Sugar Puffs was never a cereal where I grew up, but Frosties was. So of course I picked that one. So like, imagine the marketing possibilities. It gets a bit Black Mirror itself, that Netflix now knows in every country that they have something. Where do people pick what? How can we use this information to, I don't know, make shows and things that people want and sell more subscriptions, sell more Frosties, everything like that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to even see if Sugar Puffs was a real thing, and I guess it was. I've never seen it before in my life. It has a weird monster, because they are like honey monster puffs, I guess. And it kind of looks like the baby from the show Dinosaurs from the 90s.
Wow.
And actually, real quick, before we get too deep into our choices, we should call out that Bandersnatch was a real game that was supposed to come out in the 80s. A company called Imagine Software, they were developing it, and it was advertised as this like game changer, this new game. Extremely immersive playing experience. The game did not come out, and the company went bankrupt. And I believe the company went bankrupt July 9th, 1984, which is actually the day you wake up as Stefan, is July 9th, 1984. So there are some like real life. He pulled Charlie Brooker. He pulled some stuff from real life for his inspiration, I guess.
Fun stuff, and we may as well mention that a Bandersnatch is Lewis Carroll creation. It's like one of those monsters that is also a thing that, very through the looking glass Alice in Wonderland, which is the type of feeling we have in this actual story as well. So it's a good choice for a name, both for that game that never came out and this game we're playing now. Or is it a game?
Well, and also back to Frosties. In America, they're not called Frosties. They're called Frosted Flakes. But I knew what they meant.
Interesting. That's interesting. And in the chat, AJ is saying that Sugar Puffs are in this country still, referring to the UK. And they were big in the 90s, had loads of big commercials. So that's really interesting as well. Do people in the UK pick Sugar Puffs over Frosties then? In Sweden, there are Frosties, but we don't have Sugar Puffs. Didn't, at least.
Yeah, weird. Because I mean, I knew what I saw Tony the Tiger, but I'm like, oh, you mean Frosted Flakes? I get you now.
Frosties is a better name, to be fair. I think that's more catchy.
No,
Frosted Flakes. Yeah, but okay, now let's not get into this. Second choice, Jim. You get to pick between two bands, Thompson Twins and the other one that I didn't pick. Which did you pick?
The Thompson Twins. I mean, because I didn't reckon the other one was like kind of like a now this is what it's called music or whatever. It looked like it was like a compilation or something to me, and I was like, oh, only a nerd listens to those. Now this is music compilations. Thompson Twins, of course.
Yeah,
and they play Hold Me Now, right?
Yeah, and this is one of those things where this is a cool idea, but I also felt already like I knew kind of what they were doing. Where whichever choice you did, it changes the soundtrack like later in the thing when he's walking around with earbuds or headphones, and it just makes sense because you don't have to reshoot that shit. You just put different music on it
Yeah.
depending on who did what. So it's one of those cut corners things, but still make it a bit more immersive. So good on you.
Yes, because I know, like on that point, they advert. I don't know if they advertise, but people are kind of really focusing on how there's like 500 minutes of footage, and I'm sure there's a lot of footage, but I bet you some of that is just the same scene with a different song over it, or the same scene but maybe a character is there in one version of it, then the character's not there in another version. So there are little sneaky ways, and then even some of the montages I think are tailored to specific choices when things maybe need to reset or go back. So yeah, just kind of little ways to kind of cheat it a bit.
Yes, and then we get to the first big choice, I think, where we actually have to pick whether we accept the choice, whether we accept the job offer, basically, to do the game or not. And this is where it gets interesting because I think this is very much designed for you to say yes because it's such a perfect thing. It's what this character clearly wants. The only people who would say no are the people who are like, let's see what happens if I do this. It doesn't make any sense to do it. So that's much more of a pick this the second time around type thing. And that's why they made it this way, to introduce the mechanism of what happens and to get to replay the bit but change stuff. Like this is where we are supposed to get introduced to that, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And it's such a smart, fun way to do that because you give a cut, like, the first two choices are just someone is holding something up to the screen. And it's like, which one do you want? Getting you in the mode of making the choices. And then this choice does feel like, okay, here we go. We're having some effect on the plot and we're going to steer you a certain way. And you're right. Only like if you're first watching it, and you choose not to, it's because you're being like, haha, I'm going to pick no, see what happens.
Yeah.
And then I guess you're surprised because you're like, oh, wow, it keeps going. But it's such a nice way to then throw you into Black Mirror because when you accept it and you see that your game fails, and then you get the like a quick montage to bring you back to that moment and things are different. And you're like, oh, wait, so diverted realities, does time exist? All right, I get you, Black Mirror. I see what we're doing here.
Yes. And I think it would have been annoying that you make that choice and then the game ends if they didn't, do that. But this is clearly by design. We get back and he tells Colin what the problem with the game is instead of the other way around. Stefan, that is, he's like, oh, it's a buffer error. And Colin also seems aware that something weird is happening. Which is super fun because it sets up stuff later. Now, quick aside, Jim, have you ever played the game Undertale?
No.
No. So there is a bit, I just wanted to bring it up because watching Bandersnatch made me think of lots of other pieces of media that do interesting type things. And this particular choice reminded me of, there is a point where there's a choice that you don't really make, but it's very similar to this in that you kill a character, but you kind of do it accidentally. And what most people will do, it's just a fight scene basically, and you can choose not to kill them, but most people will accidentally kill them. And then you load up the game and you go back and you do it and you make sure you don't kill them. But then the game is aware that you did that and the game calls you a murderer. I know what you did. You went back and changed stuff. And you're like, what the fuck? Because you're even more in control of it than you are of this, obviously. So that's an even more extreme version of this choice, I think.
That's cool. That's very cool. We get back into it and it's kind of setting it up like, oh, okay, now I'm going to write it how I know it. I'm going to be the lone gun here. And you start to just a general story sense. You're like, okay, this is when the tortured genius becomes crazy because there's that fine line. Now when we went to, cause from here, you go to the psychiatrist, right?
Yes.
I did not want to talk about my mom. I said no twice.
What happened?
Then it just kind of went through, kind of just went to another scene. I was surprised. It just kind of moved on because in my own mind state, I'm like, I'm this character.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I don't want to talk about right now, it's my mom, because it's going to bring up too much painful memories. But it does, like we were talking about, and eventually I'm going to get brought back around again, because obviously we have to get into that. And yeah,
Yes.
I get brought back around again eventually to talk about my mom.
Well, speaking of which, after you accept the offer and go back because it fucks everything up, I accepted the offer again because it brings you back and the game gets shit ratings and you restart it. But I accepted the offer again because I was like, I wonder what will happen. And that was me being that shithead who's like, I shall say no just because I wanted to see what would happen. And you get to the whole thing with the TV where you can choose where to go back. And after that, I was like, okay, I should stop fucking around, because it takes you out of it if you, like, at the very first big choice, you're like, no, I gotta explore every possibility. So I was like, no, I'm just gonna go with it, go with the flow, and not think too much about it. So I actually did talk about his mother. I guess that was selfish in me wanting to see what would happen, because saying yes to something is usually more exciting than a no. Story wise, I mean, not.
Sure.
But you're right. I see your point of view of, like, why would you want to talk about it?
I was
But
being
yes,
Stefan and not myself, because I
yes.
didn't realize it at this point that I wasn't, like, I was
Mm,
still thinking I'm like, when you watch a TV show or something and you kind of just put yourself in the role of the main character. So I'm like, okay, I'm the main character. Or when you're playing a video game, like, this is what my Arthur would do in Red Dead. So I was like, no, he's it's too early. I can't be talking about my mom yet.
yes. But yes, if you do select that, you get the story from his childhood about the rabbit, which I assume you did get at some point.
Yes, I did.
When did that sort of get thrown in your face?
Let me scroll through my choices here. It might have been after I okay, yeah, no, it was after I got another false ending. It was later on I destroyed my computer, and
Right.
then I was done. And it was like, all right, go back. Now I was like, oh, okay, I can go talk about my mom now. It feels natural at this point.
Okay. So let's see here. Oh yeah, but I was like, in therapy, they lay the groundwork there, because I think the therapist says, or no, he says, when he's talking about the choice to say no to the game design thing, he says, I don't know where that urge came. That's I don't know where the urge to say that came from. And I was like, I fucking knew it. This is where we're going with this. Okay. But yeah, I wanted to see. I wanted to see about the mother there. So it brings you back and you only have the choice to say no, which again was one of those things where if you have two choices, at some point it's going to corner you and just make you do one thing, which it does later, giving you options of, like, throw tea on the computer or destroy the computer, or I don't remember, but a couple of choices where it's like, it's the same thing. Yes. And fuck yes,
Oh yeah, that's a great moment. And because then I think from there, yeah, basically just like left, and then it went to another music choice. I could choose either the Bermuda Triangle. I think they're records. Yeah, I'm at the record store.
Yeah.
Or Tangerine Dream. I didn't really know either one, and I was like, well, the Bermuda Triangle sounds trippy. Maybe
Same
I'm in
here.
the Bermuda Triangle, so that's what I picked.
Yep, same here.
And
Same
then
here.
and then I shouted at Dad because I forget what the other choice was.
Throw tea over a computer, which I
Yeah,
think ends the game.
yeah, that's what I figured. So I shouted at him, and then he brought me back to the
The therapist.
the therapist. And there was an option to follow Colin, but at that point I didn't know who Colin was still, and I didn't
Yeah.
see him in the shot because I was like looking down.
I didn't see him in the shot, but then it said follow Colin, and I knew who Colin was, so I followed him. But I was like, what is the shot? And then it's just follow Colin. I was like, oh, okay. So you didn't follow Colin then?
No, I visited the doctor.
Okay.
And then from there was the moment, I assume you ended up getting this eventually, where I could choose to bite my nails, or there was something else.
Tug your earlobe, right?
Yeah, but then like my remote was messing up because I couldn't pick, and then it just picked bite nails for me, and I was like, oh my god, are they fucking with me? Like, I thought that was a level of the thing now. Like, wait, now I don't have a choice anymore. Oh my god, who's picking for me?
Right.
And that got into more of the talk of, like, because he fought against it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind of saying like, someone's controlling me. I don't know where these impulses are from, and gave me the pills. Of course, I flushed the pills because I feel like if you take the pills, that's not going to help. But then I destroyed the computer, which brought me back to talk about my mom. So now going back to you, when you followed Colin,
Right. I followed Colin to his house and he offers you some drugs because he's like, oh, and he seems to know what's going on. Of course, I took the drugs, though this is one of those things where I've learned that if you say no, he just spikes your drink anyway. So it's kind of similar. I took the drugs and you have this realization about free will, and Colin tries to prove this. It goes out on the balcony and you get to pick who jumps. And we already mentioned this before the show, but I picked Colin to jump because it was like, it's your big theory. I'm not going to prove your theory for you. You picked Stefan, right?
Yeah, I jumped. And going back real quick, because you talked about it already, but like going through the flashback with your mother, it isn't they did the thing right where they pop up, but there's only one choice where you can't go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that because it was kind of like hey, we're in a flashback, so you're not going to get a choice here, even though that might change later. But yes, I eventually got to your point because then when I went back to talk about my mother, then it gave me the option again when I'm back at the therapist again to go and follow Colin. And yes, I also took the acid, but I chose to jump because I believed him. And I'm like, hell, I know that you're right because I'm making decisions here. And I thought maybe it was going to open up some sort of heaven dimension, maybe, or
right.
But
So I didn't see it. What happens when you jump?
you just fucking die and then have to kind of go back to the moment. Pretty much, it's just kind of like, all right, you're dead, and then that's that, and then you get to go back, and I'm like, all right, now you jump.
So Colin does eventually jump in all of them. Do you then? Okay, so if you want to see, I think any of the proper endings, let's call them, I guess you have to go with Colin, right? Because otherwise you destroy the computer, or I'm not sure. I'm looking at flowcharts and it still doesn't make any sense.
Well, I still got to the point, even after when I finally had him jump, it did give me to the point again where I could either hit the desk or break the computer. But this time, of course, I didn't break the computer. I hit the desk. But before that, yeah, like now, obviously, when you have Colin jump, then you see his wife, concern. Where's Colin and his baby? And then you see the Bandersnatch, the monster, right?
Oh yeah, that scared me. And then he wakes up and he's just still working on the computer, and like there's more pills. But I think in this case you only have the option to throw the pills away. So I never had the option to flush the pill, or sorry, to take the pills. I think if you take the pills, it gives you an ending.
Yeah,
gives you an ending where the game is average if you take the pills. So let that be a lesson to all you game developers out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, because since I didn't follow Colin and saw the doctor, and it gave me the option to take the pills or not. But yeah, I was never taking those pills. Although this is very if we get into like real world stuff, this is very anti-medication, which is not a good thing to be doing for people out there. Some people need their medication.
Yes. Well, I mean, with the way things turn out, maybe it's pro medication.
That's true.
But yes,
you make a bad game that's on autopilot.
That's true, but at least you don't murder your dad. So it's delivery day, and you go to hand over the game, but it's broken because he's adding in an arc about the CIA or FBI, right? I mean, you saw that too.
What? I didn't get to that point yet because now when I hit the desk after Colin jumped, and then I kind of woke up, and then I hit the desk instead of the computer, it gave me the choice to either pick up the coding book or a picture of his family. I picked the book up, and it led me through to going into the dad's locked room or what have you. And it gave me a choice between PAC is the password or like PAX or something. And I was just like, okay, Pac-Man. So I just picked PAC, and I think then I ended up throwing T over my computer, like something dumb like that. But he fought. Oh yeah, because then I ended up at another point where I could throw T over the computer, but then when I chose it, he fought against it and wouldn't do it.
Right. Okay. Interesting. For me, that all happened there. Although I did get that scene where he's trying to deliver it, and it's not finished. The game is glitching out, so he says, "Just give me the weekend," and he's going to finish it over the weekend. Then, so sort of raising the stakes of that.
Maybe I just missed that in my notes. I must have had the same thing then.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
no real choices there, I think. So I think we're in the same place, and I also picked up the book actually. Also got to the safe, put pack, of course I did. And what happens then is you find the patient files and the trauma inception, where your mother and all of that. It's all completely fake. But of
yeah.
course, you've also gotten sort of a you watched before this, I think, that tape of the writer of the book and how he went crazy, and there's a documentary on it. And did you get that at all in this run through? I assume you did.
It's interesting because I got that because there's two ways that goes about. Like, because in one hand, Colin was there
Mm-hmm.
and he gave it to me. He gave me the tape. He's like, "You should watch this," and
So
that
that's
got me.
when. Right. Sorry.
But then in another take, I mean, he's not there. I guess he jumped or whatever. And so then like
Yes.
the assistant comes in and says, "Hey, Colin said to give you this."
Yeah.
So either way, you kind of end up with that tape.
That's the. But I do like that though, because he jumps, but this is a different pathway, a different timeline, but he's still not there. And Stefan is noticing that and is freaking him out that why isn't he here then? He was supposed to be back after
Yeah.
he killed himself, right? Do these choices actually matter in the end? So yeah, I also got the assistant giving that over. But either way, this leads us to the trauma inception and all of that, and he hits his dad, and or I tried to make him not. Wait, what happened here?
Well, because yeah, at
'Cause-
first I think there's a dream of killing your dad, like in the trauma, like when
yes.
you're having like this, like I forget if it's a dream where he's like imagining or if he's watching the VHS or whatever. But then yeah, you have a dream you're killing your dad, so then you're telling your dad about it. And yes, I tried to back off
Mm-hmm.
from
Me too.
killing him,
Yeah.
and then I think it just kind of ends because then basically I get another choice where I had to go back in time and I had to kill my dad.
Yes, exactly. So and right. So he's asking then at one point for the computer to give him a sign, and I got Pax and then the little branching pathway there. Does that sound familiar?
Well, before I got to that point, when I tried to not kill my dad, and it
Yeah.
made me go back in time and kill my dad, then it gave me the option to either chop up his body or bury him.
This is one of the big pathways I didn't get at all due to
Okay.
whatever choices I made. So that's interesting. What
I
did you
did
pick there?
I did get this one. I chose to chop him up because I was like, all right, at this point, like, because I didn't even want to kill him. So you made me kill him, whatever. Let's just chop him up. But I guess I found the way to get your game to be well reviewed because
Right.
he chops the body up, but instead of like stashing it, he makes the symbol everywhere and blood all over the wall. But then he like really focuses and makes the game. And then he's like, I figured it out. This was great. And then but then it zooms out and like your dad's head is like on a shelf in your room. But then it cuts to that nerdy guy on TV and he's like, this game is amazing. Like, this is so great. I can't believe it. 5 stars. But
So
then
you
it comes,
found the perfect ending, that is.
yeah. Then it comes out that you killed your dad because they find it. If they find your dad's dead body, eventually you get locked up, and the game gets pulled off the shelves. But then Colin's baby is grown up, and
Whoa.
it cuts to present day. She works for Netflix,
What
and
the fuck?
she's adapting the Bandersnatch game into the Netflix show that we're watching, and she's talking about like I found the code for the game, and I feel like we can develop this. And it's even to the point where on the screen, it's like Stefan's on the screen, and there's choices, but then it starts glitching out like the Bandersnatch game would.
Yeah.
And then you have the choice to destroy the computer or something. And then I destroyed the computer, and then it went to like credits, but then it went back to give me another choice.
Wait, so you were Pearl and you destroyed the computer, the
Yeah.
daughter?
Yes,
Okay.
I was controlling Pearl.
Cool. So looking at one of the flowcharts, when you kill Dad, it does say if given option regarding body, and it branches out. So there's clearly some variable or something controlling that. I didn't get that choice, though. I did kill my dad at one point. And so you do end up calling a number, right? Did that happen for you?
I did get that eventually, yes.
Mm-hmm. I got to that much sooner than most likely.
Okay.
And yeah, they spell out for you what the number is. So you call the therapist. But the weird thing is it doesn't really matter. I thought you were going to call like PAX headquarters or something, but obviously you're crazy in this version. Like you're just insane. So you just end up getting arrested anyway, and that's the game gets 2.5 stars, and you're in
Well, yeah,
prison.
I mean, is there a thing? I didn't look too much into it. If you is there, I'm sure people are trying all different numbers. Is there a secret number you could call to unlock a secret scene? You think?
There's gotta be, but like with that many numbers, there's so many
Yeah.
potential combinations. So I'm not even sure. That's got to be the Easter eggs.
Yeah.
There's got to be like some. They have to put that in their Black Mirror.
Yeah, and after I got like the Netflix thing, and then I got to go back again, then I chose to bury the body. And then when I was burying the body, Colin shows up because then it cuts back to the office, and they're like, "We're supposed to have the game today. Like, go check on him." Colin shows up and he catches me, and then, but since Colin's all open-minded like me, he's kind of
Mhm.
like not he's not really concerned. Like he sees that like my dad's dead or whatever.
Right.
And then it gives you the option either kill Colin or let him go. But to me, I'm like, well, Colin gets it. I'll just let him go. But then he just calls the cops on me and narcs me out, and I ended up in jail.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I didn't get that either. Now I'm like, fuck. I gotta now because I thought like, okay, I got enough out of this. I did enough of the endings, but now I want to see that. But then that's kind of the thing that sometimes Colin seems open-minded, sometimes not, and he talks about timelines and like a flashback is when you actually go back and do this thing, and he is aware when you're redoing a thing. He's aware that you're redoing it. He's saying things differently. But then he's not completely woke because he's not murdering people, but he does kill himself at one point. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, and I think what was happening is I kept choosing the symbol, like when he's like, send me a sign or whatever.
Yeah.
I chose the symbol. I think well, first, and that's when I got to back off from killing my dad, and then I went back in time. Then I chose Pax, and then when I chose Pax as the symbol, I think that's when it kind of gears more into the conspiracy theory thread, kind of like the meta talk about as he's developing the game, and that's when I got to
Right.
dial the number 20541. And then I think, yeah, that just still, they call the police on you or something again. Because then I got back to the point again, and I'm like, all right, this time I'm going to choose the symbol again. But then it gave me the option to choose Netflix when he says, please give me a sign. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, hell yeah, I'll send him the Netflix logo. This is different. And that's when you get all the fun, fucking weird shit that happens.
Yes, which I mean, it's an action scene, right? I mean, you're in therapy about it, and then you start talking about Netflix, and or well, first you talk to the computer for a bit, right?
Yeah.
And you get to tell him more and whatever. How did that play out? I just picked like tell him more all the time and tried to explain stuff, but I don't
That's the
know.
same thing I did. It just kept typing in. It was like, it's like TV, but online. And you get to, like, I'm watching you on a streaming show and I'm picking your choices. And then
Yeah.
he's just like, what are you talking about? And then, yeah, he ends up in therapy trying to explain what Netflix is to his therapist. And like, we're really off the roads here in the meta category. And she brings up the point of like, well, wouldn't this be more interesting if this was a TV show someone's watching? And yeah, I didn't choose yeah, I chose fuck yeah.
Yeah, of course you did.
Yeah,
So did I.
everyone would. And yeah, you get a nice karate fight with your therapist. And then what my dad, well, yeah, I chose to fight her. The only one I didn't see and I read about is when you choose to try to flee. And
Yeah,
that's
leap
when
out the
like,
window.
yeah, that's when I guess what it zooms out and it's like the director is calling you by your actor's name, but he
Oh.
thinks he's Stefan. That's what I was reading. Is that
Yeah,
he's
that's. I was thinking that as well because who would choose like to jump out the window at that point? But I need to see that one as well. I'll have to look that one up on the old YouTube, maybe Netflix. We'll see.
Yeah, apparently it just zooms out and you see the set and the crew, but Stefan thinks he's Stefan and not the actor anymore. And the director's trying to explain to him like, what are you doing? Like, we need to do this scene. But yeah, I got in the fight and then I fought my dad, and I chose to kick him in the balls. I think was one of the options because he had me in like a
Yeah,
chokehold.
me too. We're so predictable, Jim.
We're
Like
the
some,
same.
yeah, some of these are really like I think it's interesting. Some games where you make choices, like some of the later Telltale games, they will show you like people pick this, like 80% of people pick this, 20% pick that, and you were one of the 80%. I would be really interested in to see like the Netflix data on this whole thing because fuck yeah, like who's gonna pick yes in that situation?
But I was loving this. Like typically a moment like this, I would probably roll my eyes at and be like, "What the fuck is this?" But
Mhm.
with the whole like interactive thing and the fact that made choices to get here, it did feel way funner and kind of just a nice extension of what was happening. So I was all for it.
Yeah, at this point I wasn't like, whoa, it's like he's explaining the thing, because I was kind of expecting something like this at some point, but it's still fun when it
Yeah.
just goes into a weird action thing. It isn't really it's not that consequential, because it then just sort of, it's an ending and then you're back in it. And I think it's fair to say, as far as what I saw at least, there's only one real ending in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I haven't double checked on this, but I feel like when you get this ending, it just does end, right? It's not like it's going to give you an option. Maybe like post credits or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. So basically, the ending is you get to find the rabbit. You get the rabbit and put it under the bed, and you go with your mother. And it's so annoying because, of course, she's like, "Oh, I guess we'll have to take this train," and you know what's gonna happen. And the music plays, and you go on the train, and that's the end. But then they have to throw in like, they always have an extra scene where it's like, and then you woke up and it was a dream and
Yeah.
he's dead. Like, I've seen this exact scene in Black Mirror before, and
Yeah.
we get to see the therapist's office, and she's like, "Oh, how can he just died? What happened?" And then it ends.
Yeah, because I mean, he cuts off the timeline by dying back then. But even though, since we have all these different timelines, that means there still are the timelines out there where he didn't do that. But I guess whatever. It's the old artificial intelligence died on the computer thing. The Jesse Plemons in his Star Trek episode. There always is someone that died mysteriously because of this wacky Black Mirror adventure that they went on.
Yes. And it's like, you got to put that in because it's like the end of that episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer when she thinks she's in a mental institution, and it's like, no, you were just infected. But then at the end, you're like, but was she in a mental institution all along? You got to put that in there.
Yeah, well, it's dumb that they put that in there because there are still people to this day that feel like that's the real ending to Buffy. And I guess fine, you can feel that that's your ending. You'd be wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's all sorts of fan fiction, and I would be amazed if there isn't already some Colin Stefan fan fiction out there. I mean, they got the chemistry for it, they got the secret time travel abilities. We could do all sorts with this.
I'm one thing that I was happy with, at least in my watch through. Like, I guess it was probably like an hour 45 or something, but I feel like I hit all the major endings for the most part, and
Yeah.
not that like I don't feel like I have to go back and redo it or anything like that. Like there are, like, obviously, like I said, there's at least one or two that I've read about that I know I missed, but for the most part I kind of was able to hit them, and then it made sense that it would give you options to go back, just because of the nature of the plot and the story anyways.
That's why you gotta forgive when they do some things that aren't real choices, because you don't like, just for their sake on the production side, like, you got to put something together that's of a high enough quality, so you can't have it go off in every possible direction. You actually need to make a story out of the whole thing that works, whatever you choose. And also on your end, it's like, this is not a 40, like, is this a video game? Maybe, but it's not The Witcher. You don't have to sink 40 hours into it to get any out of the first fucking town or whatever. You actually can just sit down and consume it. And I felt the same way. I was like, okay, I didn't see every ending, but like I saw enough of variation, and it was kind of cool. And I got to the real ending, and I'll move on with my life.
Yeah. Because I wonder, like, I assume a lot of people maybe would hit some of the soft endings and then be like, all right, I'm done. Like, even though it gives you the choice of like going back, they're like, all right, I'm done. That was fun.
They gotta, but they are intentionally unfulfilling. Like, I can't think of any endings that are fulfilling except the bittersweet one that you actually get at the end. Because unless it's the Netflix one where there's a big action scene and you're like, all right, I'm done.
But shit, I'm trying to remember, because didn't it have a post credits? Let me take a look here.
I'm sure it did. I mean, it's Black Mirror. Although mine just moved on to another episode of Black Mirror, so
I tried to play, and I was like, no, slow down, Netflix, come on.
Yeah.
Secret post credits scene.
Mm-hmm.
Many people have encountered it incidentally. We stumbled upon it by accident We figured out a sequence of choices. The scene itself, we see Stefan back on the same bus he took when he visited Tuckersoft for the first time at the beginning, but instead of choosing it, oh no, I did see this actually. Instead of pulling and choosing a tape to listen to while he rides, he pulls out a tape of his finished game called Bandersnatch. I actually did see this.
Oh,
Then it just starts playing these weird video game sounds, like these bizarre. Like he puts it in his Walkman, and it's playing the same scene, but it's just playing unpleasant gaming sounds over the speakers.
That's so weird. So, well, we before wrapping up, we got to mention, of course, there's so many Easter eggs because it is Black Mirror. The most obvious one, it's not really an Easter egg. It's like they put the Metalhead game in the thing. Yep. Metalhead, our favorite episode of Black Mirror. They put that up on the walls. I had to look a few up here. I wouldn't have spotted them, but back in that episode, you know, with the guy who goes into virtual reality. I know I'm describing 10 different episodes of Black Mirror, but the horror one where he has to stay in a haunted house for a certain period of time and then he's, spoilers, dead at the end. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I don't know if I even saw that one. I haven't seen every episode.
No, you definitely saw this one. We discussed it.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, it's
the Tales from the Crypt one?
The what?
Was it the one that's like Tales from the Crypt?
Maybe. It's the one, it doesn't matter, but anyway, there is
the video game one. Why didn't you call it it's okay, no, you should have said the video game one. But yeah, oh, sorry, I was reading about playtest. You're talking about playtest. It's got Kurt Russell's son's in it, and he's testing out the new game, and it's like a haunted house experience. And then of course, very much like this episode, it's like it cuts to people like, is he okay? He just died. Yes. What happened?
Yes, exactly. And I according to my Googling, one of the characters picks up a copy of Edge magazine, and the front cover promises a review of Bandersnatch, suggesting that, you know, the modern remake actually was completed there. So there's one of the little Easter eggs there.
Yeah, it's weird because I kind of don't love when Black Mirror is like self-referential. Like, it is interesting that they're kind of pitching, like, I guess it's a Black Mirror multiverse in a way, because this show's not above, like, we've seen that there are like universes that live in an artificial hard drive or whatever, and then we've seen from this there are multiple timelines. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to be in the singular universe, because this is Black Mirror, baby. This is a multiverse.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense when you see like the episode that is sort of Tales from the Crypt. That's the one where it's a guy running a museum, right?
Yes. Yep.
So in that one, you got to put all the references in, but they do it for like everything. I mean, there's a game called Nosedive with a Z in there.
Right. Yep.
And there's an episode called Nosedive. I mean, that's all right. It's just the name of an episode or whatever. But anyway, yes, Bandersnatch. It's good. I recommend checking it out. Is my summary.
You already said that the name of the building is San Junipers.
No, missed that one.
Yeah, I guess the name of the medical building that Dr. Haynes is at. And White Bear is actually one of the episodes I haven't seen all the way through. I think I've seen like the first 10 minutes. And apparently that symbol is the symbol from White Bear. And there is a theory that this is just another version of that episode, White Bear. Because White Bear was like, wasn't it like a TV show or something where they're watching people kill each other, or like criminals pay for their crimes by going through like some sort of televised event? I don't know.
Yeah, sounds right. Sounds like Black Mirror. But either way, there's lots of Easter eggs, but they don't really need to rely on it. They did a solid enough thing. I think I was in the mindset as well. I mentioned just to go even further down the nerd tunnel. So there's the game Undertale I mentioned. There's a sequel of sorts called Deltarune, and one of the parts of that is it's a very well, it's not a simple game, but it looks like a standard type game, but there is an undertone that that the character you're playing in the game, there's like dialogue options that indicate that you, the person controlling this person, are not the same as the character. Like, there are instances where you're like in a hospital and they're like, oh, please, we've missed you in your piano playing, why don't you go play a beautiful melody? And you go to the piano and hit the A button and it's like plonk plonk, and then you go back and they're like, Oh, that sounded a bit different. Sort of giving you small hints that you are actually controlling this person, and I won't say how it ends, but there is a sort of hint. This is just the first part of this game is out. It's not completely out yet, but there's a hint that the character in the game really resents you and the things you make it do, and there's going to be like a struggle between you and the character in the game in upcoming sort of episodes. So I played that very recently before this, so I was very much in the same mindset. So maybe that's why some of the things I was very much like tuned into, like, yeah, this is what we're doing, and at the same time I wasn't like, whoa, mind blown, because I was already like expecting that sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll have to check that game out. I mean, I know I've heard people reference it. I know I'm late passing, but that does sound very cool.
That's pretty cool.
And yeah, I mean, like we said, this is like a perfect Black Mirror thing. It's such a it's a fun way to do this. It's just hard to say if like I want, you know, the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or something to give me like a choose your own adventure episode, you know?
Yeah, pick which bow you take to the dance. You don't want that, I think. And it's interesting that Netflix has done this sort of thing with like children's shows, apparently, where you get to like pick simple stuff, because that's the type of storytelling that, like, super simple storytelling or super advanced storytelling. That's what works in this format, I think. Bandersnatch, super advanced, or like, which song do you want to hear, this one or that one? Or you're going to hear both either way. Like, the super simple or advanced is probably what works best. In the middle, just give me a movie.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I'd still say great success. Very cool thing to release. Even though I mean, last year I think when we had like the season 4 of Black Mirror, I was maybe saying I was a little kind of burnt on it, but this got me like kind of re-energized. I'm excited to see some stuff. I do hope it's not the standard, you know, I'm in the game and then I die in real life stuff when they have the episodes that premiere, but I'm excited for it.
Great. So that wraps everything up. What's your thoughts on Black Mirror? Excited for season 5, is it?
Did we miss anything? Is there something that maybe you uncovered in your Bandersnatch adventure that we missed? You could let us know.
Yes. Did you go insane and chop up your parents? Send us pics. Pixar didn't happen to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. You can, of course, also leave a review on iTunes or whatever podcatcher you use. We very much appreciate those. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think that wraps it up, Jim. Anything else?
Do we have a
we don't have a thing.
All right.
No.
Sorry.
No, we don't. Just thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Or will we? It's up to you. It's a choice.
Choose yes.